Hell in a Cell is this Sunday, and we have one last pit stop before we get to the show. Welcome to Call It in the Ring. My name is Marcus Stewart, and we are going to be talking about Smackdown Live, the September 11th show of 2018. And as always, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can also check out the show on iTunes and Podbean. Just search for Marcus Writes About Games if you want to download, and vice versa. If you're listening to one of those two platforms, you have this lovely YouTube version to check out as well. But now that that's out of the way, let's hop to it. So the show opens the only way that it really can, with a 11 bell toll for the anniversary of the September 11th attacks, which, you know, totally fine. After that, Jeff Hardy comes out and he talks about how he's spent his whole life battling demons and how he's managed to overcome every single one of them. But this Sunday, he is going to be stepping inside Hell in a Cell to face the demon known as Randy Orton. And the crowd was really quiet for this, like really quiet. And they were actually quiet for the first portion of the show, where there was as Jeff's talking, it felt like you would think and maybe they were still like reeling after the bell salute, but it was just kind of weird. I was like, it's really quiet, and all you could hear was one kid that just kept screaming, or like one or two kids that were the most audible, and they were yelling a bunch of stuff because they were really excited about Jeff Hardy or something. But it was just noticeable. It was almost new, like Japanese, like a Japanese wrestling crowd, which are traditionally very quiet. Anyway, so Jeff talks about demons and how he's going to exorcise them inside the cell and beat Randy Orton. And he ends the promo by saying, "I'm going straight to hell. Enjoy the show," which I think I'm going to steal as the either the beginning of this of the show for my show going forward. I'm just going to open up Calling in the Ring by saying, "I'm going straight to hell. Enjoy the show." So thank you for that, Jeff. Of course, before he can get to Randy, he needs to exorcise an old demon in Shinsuke Nakamura. And that takes us to our first match, Jeff Hardy versus Shinsuke Nakamura, non-title. And this was a totally fine back and forth match. Nothing really to write home about, but again, totally acceptable. Maybe their longest match that they've had? Maybe. I don't know. Their match, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the match where Orton first interfered 2 months ago was about the same length. But much like that match, it ends the same way, where Jeff gets the upper hand, hits the Twist of Fate, or Twist of Fate Stunner, whatever you want to call it. It's not really a Twist of Fate, because he kind of hits it into a stunner. So it's like the Twist of Hate that he used to call it in TNA back when he was a villain. Trivia there. And then he goes for the Swanton, but then Randy Orton slithers out of the crowd and pushes Jeff off of the turnbuckle, drawing a disqualification. I'm glad that Shinsuke didn't take the pin here, because I totally expected him to lose, just to kind of, build the story that Jeff was saying before the match, that he needs to conquer one demon before heading to another one. So I thought they were totally going to have Shinsuke eat the win, which always annoys me when WWE uses its mid-card champions as stepping stones for other things. But we did not get that. And Randy proceeds to do what Randy Orton loves to do to Jeff Hardy, and that's beat the ever-loving crap out of him. He's like slamming his head repeatedly into the stairs, which looks really brutal. And he goes for the RKO. Thankfully, he does not try to rip his ears off, but Jeff is able to reverse it, hits the Twist of Fate, and hits the Swanton. So Jeff, once again, second week in a row, he comes out on top of Randy. So history would suggest that Randy picks up the win on Sunday, which I expect to, just because that just seems like the better way to go, or at least in terms of you can do more with Randy picking up the win, because his mission is to go after all superstars. And honestly, I expect Randy to be next in line to challenge AJ. Like, I expect AJ to retain against Joe, and then Randy will be the next one, because that seems completely perfect, given Randy's mission of going after the big fan favorites. And, why not? Why not? So, they're giving kind of Jeff giving Jeff these smaller battles, but Randy will ultimately win the war on Sunday, most likely, probably after Jeff tries to jump off the damn cell and misses, and hopefully doesn't die. So, fine match. We're backstage with Maryse, and The Miz, because Maryse is going to be main eventing the show. She's going to have her first singles match on Smackdown in about 7 years, and she talks about how it only took her 5 months to get back into the ring after giving birth, mind you, whereas it took Bryan 3 years to get back in the ring. Miz goes off and makes fun of Bryan and Brie's marriage, saying that they're a marriage of convenience, and that Bryan isn't pulling his weight in the relationship because of Brie having to do more of the work. And, just typical Miz and Maryse being the, douchebag villains that they're so great at being. This takes us to AJ Styles, who earlier in the day was in the arena, the empty arena, and he's chilling out on the stairs, and he talks about the whole Samoa Joe issue, and he says that, Joe has targeted AJ's temper, which has always been his weakest point, and the quickest way to do that was to talk about his family, and it worked. However, Joe has his own family, believe it or not, and unlike Joe, AJ is a man of integrity, so he's not going to talk crap about Joe's family. But what he is going to do is that he is going to, beat the crap out of Joe, basically, at Hell in a Cell, and prove that he is, this is the house that AJ Styles built, and that Joe is going to find out truly how phenomenal AJ really is at Hell in a Cell. And this was a nice little, intense little promo. I liked it. And I always like when they do different things like empty arena stuff, or even when they've brought back the old school interviews on the stage. Like, it's always nice to have different venues and different styles of doing interviews or promos, So, well done here. Well done. This takes us to Charlotte Flair, who has a promo of her own backstage being interviewed. And, she's asked why she decided to take on Sonya Deville. And she says, simple, I thrive on competition. It's my thing. It's how I get my jollies. And that Becky will learn that it's easy to talk the talk, but harder to walk the walk this Sunday when they face each other. This leads us to Flair versus Sonya, which I think I said a few weeks ago was a matchup that always intrigued me, and I would like to see more of these two, like an actual maybe title program in the future, depending on how long Charlotte holds on to that title. But this was a good match. It started out with some pretty decent chain wrestling between the two. They match up well. Their styles match up really, really well. I was happy with this match. Sonya looked really good here. She got the hang with the champ, go toe to toe, go tit for tat with her, and I want to see more of Sonya in general, as well as Mandy, who was out there ringside with Sonya. I feel like it's been a while since you've seen either of them, and the division could it's always nice to have to mix it up, especially on the top. So like I start building up Sonya, have her punch some people out for a while and get her into an actual title program with Charlotte, provided she retains on Sunday. But this was a good match. Flair won, of course, with the figure eight. And then after the match, she hops up the ring. She's heading up the ramp. She decides to take a selfie with a couple of fans, which is always cool. And then Becky, disguised as an evil fan, she's got like a black wig, attacks Charlotte from the crowd. Kind of reminiscent of Chris Jericho doing the same to Rey Mysterio when he was wearing a Rey Mysterio mask and attacked him. Like, what was that? 2009? Jeez. Digging that one up. And Becky beats up Charlotte on the ramp and puts her in to disarm her. and she's gonna break her arm, and Charlotte's screaming, but, she relinquishes the hold once a bunch of refs come out, and Becky says it's been 2 years too long, and that she is going to take that thing at Hell in a Cell. This takes us to another, going back to doing promos a bit differently and being creative. We get Samoa Joe, who is he tells us a bedtime story called Night Night AJ, complete with an actual physical book that looks like almost like a Harry Potter-ish book. And he tells this fairy tale story about pretty much just recapping their rivalry and, still talking crap about AJ not caring enough about his family. But we get, animated pages and the video recaps of the feud that are under this filter, kind of looks like the plasticky filter from Photoshop. And it was fine. This could have been super duper cheesy and dumb, but Joe manages to make this work and make it not only just really jerky, but semi-menacing. So I was digging this. I was like, okay, that's cool. Especially after kind of following last week's attack when he said that AJ won't be able to tuck the kids to bed because he's already gone night night. This was a nice follow up to that little statement. And what cracked me up was that the final page of this book was this semi creepy looking artwork of Joe with the title and Wendy and Annie Styles looking really happy, and it just looked sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Somewhat unsettling, just purely the way the art looked. It looked kind of weird. Joe in particular, he looked weird, whoever painted or drew him. So that was something else. But well done. I liked it. Becky Lynch is backstage, and one of the interviewer ladies is trying to talk to her, and she just keeps it short and sweet and says that, she promised she wasn't going to break Charlotte's arm until after she gets the title, and that's what she's going to do. This takes us to Kramer Kingston. We have our finals of the sorta kinda tag team tournament, which we've been getting a lot of lately, between The Bar and Rusev Day. But before the match, New Day is on commentary, and Kofi dons his parody interviewer persona named Kramer Kingsman, and he cuts a funny little just promo spying on The Bar and saying how this is The Bar in their natural environment. Look at them. And The Bar is just in the background, oblivious that this is happening. They're just kind of broing it up, just hyping each other up, And, funny stuff from Kofi. And this brings us to the tag match. Rusev Day and The Bar have a pretty good match, as expected. Not much to say other than just it was a good back and forth match with a semi-surprising outcome, with Rusev Day picking up the win after Sheamus goes for the bro kick on Rusev, and then Aiden, the human shield, pushes him out of the way and takes the bullet, gets the song kicked out of him. But that allows Rusev to have an opening to hit the Machka kick and pin Sheamus for the number one contender spot. And they will be facing the New Day at Hell in a Cell. Do they win? I don't know. I probably not. But I mainly because Rusev is kind of needed as a singles guy right now, primarily for Shinsuke Nakamura, who has, and I said this last week, he has no viable challengers right now. There's no real mid-card to speak of on SmackDown. All the big good guys are main eventers or upper mid-card guys. There's no pure mid-carders. And Rusev is kind of, he's the best fit for that. He's the most popular good guy that's not AJ, Jeff, or Brian, who are all tied up with stuff right now. And Shinsuke needs someone because everyone else is a villain. And Rusev and Shinsuke seem pretty much almost obligatory at this point, just because there's nothing else for Shinsuke to do. So Rusev's tied up with this tag thing right now, but I don't expect him to pick up the titles. In fact, because the Bludgeon Brothers, depending on how bad Rowan's, I think it was Rowan that's injured right now, how bad it is, like, I expect the Bludgeons to get their rematch against New Day in the near future. So this seems like more just of a one-off to kind of pay off this whole Rusev tag team thing. Maybe they'll lose because Aiden screws up again, or maybe they'll just get beat, and him and Aiden be like, hey, we tried, but maybe it's time for me to go my separate ways. I need to focus on my singles career. And then he goes after Shinsuke. Doesn't necessarily have to be a bad breakup. It could be amicable, which you don't often get in wrestling, but I could see that happening here. We'll see. So yeah, that's why I don't think Rusev Day is going to be picking up those blue belts on Sunday. Let's see, we get a quick recap of Alexa versus Ronda Rousey for Hell in a Cell. Sure, I guess. We get our next match, which is R-Truth versus Andrade Cien Almas with Carmella, who is now, I guess, a babyface accompanying Truth to the ring. Truth is back on TV a lot, which is fine. Again, mainly for the main reason I just said of, like, there's no mid-card on SmackDown, really. And they have a decent match in the beginning. There's a great spot where, like, Truth does a bunch of backflips, and then Andrade counters or one-ups him by doing backflips, but doing a backflip kick into Truth and just kind of nailing him with it. It's weird, like, Truth backflips backwards, then Andrade backflips forwards and hits a kick, if that makes sense. It looked cool. But this match is a totally solid one-on-one match. Andrade picks up the win after he hits the Tranquilo pose, and Zelina does they do the double pose. And then Carmella, for whatever reason, I guess because she's Carmella, is like, oh, screw that, and yanks Zelina out of the ring, which distracts the ref, and Truth kind of looks over and allows Andrade to roll up Truth for the win. We'll see where this pairing of Carmella and Truth goes from here, but this is quite a something of a downgrade for Carmella, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way to Truth, but just compared to where she was just a couple weeks ago at SummerSlam and what she's doing now, like, she's not even having matches. She's just kind of playing cheerleader to R-Truth. So, interesting drop there. Next up, Asuka is being interviewed backstage, and she's asked why she came back to help Naomi, and Naomi pops up and thanks her for the save and reiterates the question, and Asuka says that, hey, she thinks that the Iconics are mean, and she can't understand anything they say with those accents of hers. And Naomi's like, oh, I feel that. Well, I can tell that you feel the glow, which Asuka misinterprets for go, so she tries to leave. And then Naomi tries to explain, like, no, I said go. And then Asuka's like, oh, okay. And then she says, oh God, some word in Japanese. I've heard the word. Oh man, I can't remember the word that Asuka says, but Naomi interprets it for teriyaki. It rhymes with teriyaki. Is it sukiyaki? Is that even a word in Japanese? I don't know. She says something that rhymes with teriyaki, which Naomi interprets as teriyaki, and she's like, hey, yeah, actually, I am pretty hungry. And, it's just, wacky. We can't understand each other, lost in translation kind of thing. Totally harmless, kind of cute segment there. This brings us, speaking of kind of cute, this brings us to our main event of the evening. We got Brie Bella taking on Maryse with, of course, Bryan and Miz in their respective corners. Miz and Maryse come out second, and the match starts, and Maryse immediately bails and keeps running from Brie, and Brie's getting upset. And then eventually Brie just grabs the mic and says that she always knew Maryse was a coward. And then Miz grabs the mic and kind of flips out, saying that, Maryse is a two-time Divas champion and one of the longest reigning Divas champions in history, and is wrestling after giving birth just a few months ago, and how, that does not make her a coward, and decides that we don't deserve to see Maryse competing in the main event. So we've lost it. We have lost our main event. So they decide to try to take a walk. Of course, Brie does not allow that to happen as they get up the ramp. Brie snatches Maryse from behind, though she does not snatch her ball because that would be gimmick infringement for Naomi, and throws her back into the ring. And Miz tries to offer distraction. Maryse gets in a cheap kick and gets a very close near fall, but eventually Brie turns it around, and it's kind of dominating Maryse. Eventually locks in the yes lock, and Maryse is holding on, getting ready to tap, and then Miz yanks Brie and pulls her to the floor, and she just kind of hits the floor hard, like on her back, just a splat. And it looked like, for a second, that Miz kind of apologized. Like, he kind of looks like, oh shit, I wasn't supposed to pull her that hard. He may have just been totally acting, because like as soon as as she hits the ground, Bryan comes charging at Miz like a bat out of hell and just jumps all over Miz and starts beating the crap out of him, as he should, because this guy did just put his hands on his wife, and chases him into the ring. Eventually Bryan is so trying to get his hands on Miz, and then Miz is able to send Bryan to the outside and right into Brie, who was recovering on the floor. Like, Bryan just kind of gets thrown through the ropes and falls on top of Brie and knocks her back down. And as Bryan is concerned and checking on Brie, Miz attacks Bryan from behind and throws him into the stairs and starts beating him up and throws him back into the ring. But eventually, and Maryse tries to get involved, starts beating up Brie as well. But eventually Brie and Bryan turn it around, and Maryse gets sent outside, and it's Miz by himself in the ring with Bryan and Brie. Bryan is yelling at Miz, saying, "If you're gonna hit my wife, now I'm gonna punch you in the face," and yelling at him to get up. And as Miz gets up, he kind of puts his guard up, expecting Bryan to punch him, but then he turns around into a big old forearm from Brie, and Bryan clotheslines him to the outside. And the villains run away as as Bryan and Brie celebrate in the ring, and that wraps up the show. Totally fine. This was nothing but story advancement, which is fine. I'm excited to see the match. It should be entertaining if nothing else, and I think it's a decent way to extend this feud without doing the same thing over and over. And you can only have Bryan and Miz wrestle in a singles match so many times. This is a totally acceptable detour, so to speak. And I'm just wondering, I can't see this going to WrestleMania. I've heard some people suggest that, but the feud, I don't know, that's a long time, unless something happens in between that kind of pauses the feud for a bit, like if Bryan and Miz find something else to do. But if it does continue, a Survivor Series seems like the latest that you could run this for now. So this would be a totally fine touchstone on that road to Survivor Series, but the match should be fun. I think it'll be good. So that wraps up SmackDown Live, everyone. We got Hell in a Cell again on Sunday. I will be reviewing the Cell maybe a little bit late, just because I won't be able to watch the Cell live. So I probably won't watch it either till late that night or the next day. So there's chances are the Cell review probably won't come till later Monday afternoon or Monday night. We'll see, but that's what it's looking like right now. But stay tuned for that. And again, stay tuned at Marcus Writes About Games for other future episodes of Call in the Ring, as well as episodes of my other show, Carving Gaming Rushmores, if you're into video games. And you can also find me on Twitter at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. And you can read my writing, as a video game writing, over at my website, Marcus Writes About Games, as well as extralife.com, where I contribute, and as well as gaminghistoria.com. You can find me over there. So until next time, wrestling fans, have fun at Hell in a Cell. Hopefully it's a good show, and I shall see you next week. Bye-bye.